that's better. All right, and we are back. Well, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with the orientation thing, but that's why we're just going to leave it, and hopefully it will work itself out. All right, everybody. So here we are in my wood turning dungeon. Trying to get ready for all this. I really should have got this set up a little bit better. All right, that's all right. Sorry for anybody who gets seasick. Easy. We're going to. I've got this really fancy setup using a tobacco stick. Rotate the device back, but why? All right, I guess that it is going to be dumb and not let me do the view I want. And I'm not sure why it is doing that. So we're just going to roll with it and do what it wants. Stuff smarter than me. Hi, live video. And hi, Mom. Yeah, I don't understand why it's not letting me switch. Okay. Well, I wanted it in widescreen just because it gives a better view for what we're doing. But I think we'll be able to get it done here. All right, so now we got a couple people on. Hey, Mary, how you doing? We are going to get started. So I did put out the first time I'd ever really done something like a poll or whatnot for the live. So that was interesting. And the winner was this cool crotch piece of black walnut. Walnut is definitely one of my favorites. It is always pretty. I really don't mind turning anything, but if you want to turn something pretty. Now I will say, y'all picking a walnut made me have to go put on my long sleeve shirt with the buttons and stuff and my mask because this smells like poison ivy to me. I never used to be allergic. However, I'm now allergic to it. And it's not bad. It's not anything I'll break out right away. It's just I've got a few. I can't go all day long. So once I'm done turning it, as long as I take a shower, I'm good to go. And don't worry, I always use a respirator with walnut. All right, so like I said, I was going to do this. I'm going to do this bowl kind of from the very beginning. I think the last live I did, I already had the bowl up on the lathe. But right now you can see we're starting just with the blank. That's what a big piece of wood cut basically, or a big piece of wood that's about to go onto the lathe, or a piece of wood that is made to make a bowl. It's called a blank. Yeah, it's just a log piece of wood. For some reason, it's called a blank. And you can see this is not a little piece, so it's pretty heavy. So to mount this to my lathe, this log to mount lathe, initially, I'm going to use this big monster 6-inch faceplate. Good grief. This big monster 6-inch faceplate. Make a nice level spot here and get it up on the lathe. So if you have any questions, that's what I'll be doing for the next few minutes. Back it up a little bit so people can see. And get to work. And I'm not sure how bad my face mask is going to interfere with me talking. I hope it's not too bad, but it's better than wood chips and crap in your eyeballs. All right, and so the reason I'm doing this is because, like I said, I'm going to be using screws to attach this faceplate. And this being a big, heavy piece of wood, I don't want to worry about any bark being what's going to come loose and cause any issues. So I'm going to get down to the bare wood right here in the middle. That way my faceplate will be nice and level and have plenty of gripping power with the screws. And of course, this thing is already fogging up on me today. So we might end up just going with the glasses. Okay, so the next thing, I've got it generally down into like a square area. And what I'm going to do is get my faceplate generally centered up here. I want to make sure I'm right there. And that is pretty close. And I probably will be checking my phone a little bit as we go, because as this is not going to be a very quick live, gotta make sure no one actually needs anything. There we go. All right. All right, now you can see there's a lot of screws in this, and there's I'm sure there's a possibility that this piece of wood could come off of this faceplate. It would be crazy if it didn't. That's overkill, but I'd rather do that than have something come back at my face. I take a lot of risks on this lathe, turning stuff that a lot of people won't turn, but I always try and mitigate those risks as much as possible. No one ever made an incredible piece of art by being scared. All right, so come back over this way a little bit. Now I've got to get my faceplate off, or my my chuck here off from the last time I was turning. We use the chuck for turning the inside of the bolt after we get the outside turned. Alright, so this kind of lets you guys see a little bit more the size of this piece I'm talking about. And yeah, reason I overkill the screws, because this is not a small piece of wood. Well, hopefully in an hour or two, or less, barring any problems. I think the last time I did, I broke a screw off. Alright, so you can see this is nowhere near round, and there's no way I'd try to spin this and shape it. It would take forever, and it'd be painful, because it would beat the crap out of your hands. So all I go and do is mark my center point here. Grab my handy dandy little compass. Find kind of the narrowest area, which will be right here. And just scribe a nice general circle. There we go. Give me 2 seconds to grab that battery. Now the chainsaw is 100% your friend when you're turning. Anything that you can do, let me make sure I'm not. Oh, okay, there we go. I am going to be turning a bolt. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on some of the content there. All right, so now I've got this circle that you can barely see. I've got scribed here. We're going to go ahead and do some of the shaping work to speed things up with the chainsaw. Double check all the oil here. And if the fan gets too loud, let me know. But it is nice to kind of keep some of the dust in check. The other reason this is really important is because while my lathe is decent size, I still need 500 or 600 more pounds on this thing. to turn big stuff, because it being live edge, the weight's all not distributed, and it'll just bounce. And you know, this whole, I think this is probably about 1,500, no, probably about 1,100 pounds right now, and it will shake and move all over the floor. And now you can see it makes a whole lot more sense than when I had this, or before I had it was all square. So people a lot of times look like, what is that you're doing? Sorry, this is not. There we go. All right, there we go. All right, there we go. That's a little bit better. Plus, now you can start to see what we're going to be working with here, and this is going to be a very pretty bolt. And one of the things that you're always going to want to do when you're working with a bolt this big is your tailstock, especially turning the outside, is not really optional. This big piece is your tailstock, and it locks down. So should this actually come off here, this is going to do a pretty good job of keeping this where it should be without it coming straight back at your face, kind of hold it together. So if you're turning something huge, always put your tailstock here. All right, since my camera setup is being a little bit annoying today, I'm going to show you guys what I am doing here. Flip the camera around, and this is my bowl gouge that I use. It's a full set of pretty cool gouges that the handle comes off of, and I've got my, see here, I think oh, there we go. That actually isn't too bad. So I've got my sharpening jig, have everything pretty much set up, haven't turned in a day or so. So I'm gonna go ahead and color my the edge of my chisel here with some Sharpie, and I'll show you why I do that. Whoa. I'm gonna have to invest in all the GoPro stuff I used to have. I wish I knew where it was. I don't even use it anymore. I just go with an old phone, and it seems to work better. Okay, there we go. And then after I sharpen this one, show you guys what I'm doing, I probably won't move it. I'll just come over here to sharpen it. And I'll probably do that about every 5 or 10 minutes. I sharpen my tools a lot, because if you don't, you end up with a lot more sanding work, and it's really just not as much fun to turn when your tools start to get dull. So now in my jig, I've got everything set up. everything has stayed the same. Nothing had moved. You can see how that's a nice shiny 0 black Sharpie edge. You bump your finger on that and it's going to cut the crap out of you. Ask me how I know. All right, now I got to set this back up over here, and so you can see my extremely high-tech camera mount. So you know what I'm working with here: a heavy box on top of a tobacco stick to this crazy little kind of adjustable leg mount that I do like to use. I have a tripod. Spent about 30 minutes looking for it, and then forgot. And then never found it and forgot to keep looking for it. That is the story of Aaron's life. If it can be forgotten, it will be forgotten. And I know this has to be crazy trying to watch it. Okay, that's about as good as I think it'll get at the moment. That'll work. And like I said, I've got this set. It's not cheap. Nothing in this video is cheap. Just the set I have with my knives with this handle is upwards of $600 I've got in them. So yeah, not cheap. All right, well, and now at this point, we are about ready to start shaping this bowl. I'm gonna grab a drink of my fun iced coffee right here, and then we're gonna get started. Really hoping that these will not fog up on me anymore, but they probably will. All right, so when I'm starting off on this, when I'm starting off on this this piece right here, obviously it's not going to be real well balanced, and we're probably just going to be going about 200 or 300 RPMs. Once I get it more balanced, I'll be able to pick the speed up to a piece this big, maybe 5 or 6, but nothing fast like some people you'll see turn into small bowls in the videos, and they're spinning like, you know, a couple thousand RPM. Definitely don't recommend it when working with a piece this big. Okay, so we're about 300, 350 right there, and that's about where we're going to keep it to get the south side profile shape. And I start and stop a lot just to check things, see where it's going, especially until I get the idea for my my design in my head, the shape I want. Plus, it's just always fun to start watching this insane grain come out. Now with the this is not, the motor that's on this is newer. A new motor with it's called a variable frequency drive that allows me to control my speed. I need to go up to a 3 horsepower motor. It would just make things a lot. I need a lot of things. I want a lot of things. This one's doing pretty good, so we're not going to complain too much. But that's one of the other reasons I have to go a little bit slow, is to keep it so I don't outrun my motor. I was trying to slow it down with getting the VFD to kick off. Trust me, that wasn't the sharp button. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Time Passage. I appreciate that. I will be getting it. You know what? That money is definitely dedicated for a tripod, and that's what I'm going to get with it. There's actually a specific one that looks pretty good. I like, and now check this out. You can see what's starting to show up. The sapwood, this being a crotch piece. This is also a piece of walnut from here off the farm. So I always like turning the stuff that is here from the that's here at the farm. And I've almost got it round, so I like to go nice and slow and see I've still got some of the flat spots. Nothing fast about this, folks. There's nothing quick or fast about turning a bowl, especially when you start turning stuff this big. If you try to go fast, it's not going to end up well for you. Ask me how I know. And you can see now I'm up about 500 RPM because I'm starting to get balance, which makes it a lot easier to turn, and I can take bigger cuts. One of the reasons I keep having to stop is because I want to keep, see, so I do want to do a little bit of kind of teaching people as we go, because there are some people that would like to know how to do this, or maybe don't understand how. But one of the reasons you see me keep having to stop and move this tripod here is because as I take material off of it, the distance from my bowl gouge to the wood gets further. If you try to come out here and turn when you're this far away, it's going to catch this thing, will come up, smack you in the face. You're probably going to break a couple fingers, and it's going to be nasty. It's not fun. Again, ask me how I know. All right, so if you're turning, anytime you're turning, I like to just take the extra time to stop my bowl and set my bowl gouge up where I am, within a ½ inch at least, depending on what I'm doing. If it's finer work, a little bit closer. And also, right now you can see what I was talking about with the sharp tools. So see how this is all kind of nice and smooth right here? This is walnut, it's hard as crap. And it's starting to kind of dull my knife just a little bit. I mean, it's not bad, but it's starting to tear out, and that just drives me crazy, as well as it adds more time to the sanding, and it cuts too slow. Okay, I'm going to sharpen this. I've already turned the other half of this log that this plank came from, and it was even more phenomenal than I think this was going to be. But this is going to be just so pretty because of how this white sapwood on this old creek walnut, it's not all white, it's spotted black. It's already started to turn. Just makes it so much more interesting. What I didn't even think of is that I can look at comments on my other phone, so I can stop messing with the camera. If anybody had ever told me that I would have 2 phones in my life, I told them they were absolutely insane. If anybody ever told me I'd be doing social media or YouTube more than 5 years ago, I told them that they're absolutely insane. And yet, here I am with 2 phones doing a YouTube video. Alright, I think I can go to my live here. View channel. Live, here we go. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's not... Earbuds with me talking at the same time is weird. Alright, bear with me. I've got to put... These were not cheap earbuds. And for anybody that doesn't know, I did just get hearing aids from the VA. So yeah, this guy's an old geezer too. Turn the sound down. There we go. Staying off the girl. Gay, bearded, homosexual. You know, man, you're going to have to really do better than that if you're trying to offend me. Because my son's gay, my little sister's gay, most of my best friends are gay. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's not an insult, so if that's how you meant it. Hey, but the hair and the beard's pretty cool, huh? Yeah. And one of the reasons I've really not been wanting to do a lot of lives, this is more for all my fans or followers that's been there for a long time. You know, I don't really like, there's a good chance that might have been my ex, who knows, or one of them. So, you know, if you make poor life choices, you gotta deal with the consequences of those poor life choices. Yeah, there is that. All right, back to it. See, now that we're balanced, now we can spin it up and get a lot nicer cuts. As a matter of fact, this guy was invited to be part of a drag show here in the coming weeks. I just might do it. There is always one. You know, guys, like this guy, like I definitely still get worked up, angry about stuff. I mean, people still see that quite often, but only stuff I can control, the stuff that actually matters. You know, some weird homophobe wants to call me gay, that's on him. You know, if that's how he feels, he's losing access, and he's just like walking away or like refusing to be friends with some of the coolest people in the world, you know, just because they don't love the same person as him as he does. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There's enough bullshit going on without worrying about stuff that doesn't matter. So joke's on that guy, because he's unhappy. He's probably one of those incels. Honestly, that guy has never had sex at all with a guy or a girl. Sorry, bud. Next time I'm out in town, I'll think of you when I'm at the club and going home with a girl. Or maybe a guy, who knows? Because I know you won't be. All right, I'm not going to do that on the live. I'm going to stop doing that on my live because it's something I was taught not to do. I tell people not to do it. It's not a good idea to adjust your tool rest. Even when stuff's around, it's really just bad practice to adjust your tool rest while the lathe is spinning for very obvious reasons. But, you know, you get a finger stuck in here or this thing touches it when this is spinning 500 RPMs. That is the one thing that will bust all those screws off that massive faceplate, because that's a lot of mass stopping really quickly. Do I do it a lot? Yeah. Should I? No. Okay, so what I'm doing now that I have everything generally round, I'm gonna go ahead and get the spot for my tenon, which is what I'm gonna put my big chuck on, so I can flip this around and get to the inside. That gives me a better idea for exactly how thick my bowl is going to be. I can make it thicker, or I can't, I wish, that's the hard part. I can make it thinner if I want. So I'm just going to adjust it, get my the start of my tenon, and then we'll take another look and see how we think the shape's going to be, if I'm going to change anything. A lot of times with a piece of wood like this, that's going to be this pretty, you don't need to get fancy. It does the pretty stuff. I mean, it's pretty enough without a crazy shape. So I think that instead of, I usually don't like just a just very simple round bowl. I think we will sweep this back just a little bit. Yeah. This is why this is such awesome hobby, especially if you're ADD, because it's instant gratification. I see this bowl come to shape, like right in front of me. There's no waiting. There's no wondering. It's like instantly, it's there and done. Oh yeah, I've got some. So keep an eye out, because I've got a big. It's either sycamore. I think it might be sycamore. I've got a few big stumps that I'm gonna be pressure washing and probably tomorrow, and making some really cool stuff out of. There is nothing better than a stump. Roots and stumps are the absolute best. That you make just the coolest stuff out of them. And for anybody who is a turner, or maybe thinking they want to turn, this cut that I'm making right now, the sweeping pullback cut, again, it's one of those that's not really recommended, but very effective. And be very careful, because if you're coming back towards yourself this way and you push this gouge in too far into that bowl, again, you get the catch, pull, face, pain, hospital, you know, all the things that make this a fun hobby. Oh, there it is. It's coming out now. And now you can see why I like the crotch pieces. So this was where two trees came out of the same log. So you had the main log down here, and right here was one of the logs, right here was the other log where the tree split. Always gives you some really cool, gnarly knots. And it's almost time to sharpen our gouge again. I'm starting to like that shape a little bit. It's kind of hard to tell from that angle, so we'll risk moving it. But you can see when I'm looking and trying to shape a bowl, I'm looking this way, especially with the live edge. I turn where the highest point is, and I'm following this silhouette, right? So this is where I'm looking. If you look anywhere else, it's not going to really tell you how your bowl is being shaped. The other thing that a lot of new turners, I know I had trouble with this, start turning bigger stuff, and you're like, wow, I don't want to make the bowl smaller by taking stuff on this side. Remember, your bowl is measured from the lip here. So whatever this distance is, that's how big your bowl is. It's not going to make your bowl look smaller, or it actually makes it appear bigger and less clunky to have less material here, unless you've got an obvious shape like that. But sweeping it back, make it look a little bit more delicate, and don't worry about, oh, I wanted to make a 16-inch or a 17-inch bowl, because maybe that piece of wood did not want to be turned into a 16 or a 17-inch bowl. Your piece of wood is only going to make whatever it wants to be made into. And it does not matter what you want to make it into. If this doesn't want to be made into that, it's going to say, screw you, and do its own thing. So don't fight it. Learn to talk to it and lean into it. Oh, and happy Friday. I never really know what day it is, because every day is the same around here for me. There we go. All right, time to sharpen. I wish this thing wouldn't fog up. So I got into, I think I made a post, I got into my first gallery. That's not, we haven't signed paperwork yet. We're meeting. She wants to take a look at, tell me what she wants to put in next week. So that's really cool, because I still don't have the website built. So next week, if anybody wants to buy anything, I'll be like, yes, go check this gallery out. It's actually a very nice gallery. Pretty stoked. And then on top of that, I'll know a lot more. I'm waiting on confirmations from the shows from the jury part. So I'm going to be doing, I'm hoping about 7 or 8 shows in the Western Carolina area this year. All right, let's see where we're at here. Where do we want to go? I'm actually kind of liking this. I think I just want to cut off a little bit more of this heel, make it taper down a little bit more, since it is so big and chunky, make it look a little bit more delicate. It's not quite the right thickness or shape to really try and make a big, thick, chunky bowl. At least not to me. The grain just doesn't say that. This grain is kind of swirly, a little bit more delicate. That's a little bit more the shape I was looking for. And I guess like you could almost say that it's more of a traditional salad bowl type shape. I think is what a lot of people call it. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks for helping, Mom. She's technologically. I can't even say anything. I can't even speak English. So thanks, Mom. Appreciate the help. You can see this is just so pretty. The grain, the sapwood with, it's not just regular white sapwood like a lot of walnut. See how the sapwood started to turn the dark walnut color. I was worried this wasn't going to be as pretty, especially since people voted for walnut. No, this is actually going to turn out to be super nice. So I'm kind of happy with the shape. I think. So we're just going to clean up a little bit now. Clean up down here. I need to get my my tenon made so we can flip it around and get started on the inside. So what I was doing right there is called a shear cut, and I might need to sharpen it a little bit. But instead of coming in this way with the point of my gouge, with a shear cut, I'm going to turn it sideways and basically use those sharp edges there as a razor blade. So this is another one of those things that you do have to be very, very careful. But again, it saves a lot of time sanding. All right, now at this point, I'm going to slide the tailstock back. So I did have some little jigs I had with the sizes I needed to turn my tenons to. I've got to find them or make some more. I never remember until I'm turning, and then at that point I'm like, oh, screw it, I'll do it later. So all I'm doing is taking my calipers and getting the general size of my chuck. I know about where I need to go, and now I can get this turned to the right size. So some people, especially with more traditional bowls, not live edge bowls, but even with live edge bowls, there's usually a foot or a rim a lot of times on the bottom of a bowl. I adopted the style that my my mentor Nathan Favors, he's 85, probably the most talented insane wood turner I've ever seen in my entire life. I like to keep things simple. That's kind of like what he does, keeping the shapes kind of simple. And so when this comes off, like this tenon part, when the bowl's finished, will come off. The bowl will just have like a slightly convex curve up in here. I think it just looks very, very clean and natural. Now, one super important thing, if you are a turner or you want to turn, is, if you'll probably can't see it real well, I'm not going to try and adjust it, but this and this are made to go together like a dovetail. So this angles out and the inside of this angles up. So just like a dovetail, it connects. You also do not want your tenon there to hit on your chuck face. All that, like, I don't really need to go into why, because the whys don't matter too much, except for the what happens if, and that is a very big piece of wood coming off at your face at a very high rate of speed. Listen, I do enough stupid stuff on this thing that I probably shouldn't. There's no reason to push the limit on things I can control. And right now what's happening, that's what it is. I'm hitting right here. There we go. But I want to make sure that this sits flush, touching that. And I think that is one of the last things I kind of like to do before I remove it from the tailstock, or remove it and turn it around, is if you take your tailstock, put your live center in there, now I can put pressure on, make sure everything's nice and centered. And there's a fine line here between getting it tight enough and not getting it too tight. Not tight enough, it flies off, hits you in the face. Get it too tight, it will ring off the tenon, the piece of wood, and hit you in the face. Do it wrong, it's going to hit you in the face. Keeps things interesting. The kind of fun thing, and I don't have any. So getting the bark to stay on, especially a walnut bark, is challenging. I don't usually care for the bark on the balls. I know a lot of people do. The bark stayed on here pretty good. I guarantee I'm going to lose some of it when I flip it around. So if I really wanted to keep the bark on here, tonight I would take and put super glue all around, CA glue all around the edges of the bark. Let it dry overnight, and then come back tomorrow, and that would help keep stuff from flying off. So we'll just see what happens and go with it. This one got cleaned up enough where I don't even think I need to sand anything at the moment. It's still wet. You can see, so I always turn wet wood, and where this looks lighter colored, almost green, here in a day or two, everything's going to be darkened up like that. So it's going to darken up, be even more spectacular than it already is. I think I might put a piece of 120 grit on, power sand it just to pop the grain and let you guys show anybody. I don't go to the emergency room, Mom. Trying just checking any comments. And funny enough is, yes, one man's firewood. We won't talk about how much of the stuff I turn is like a power struggle between Poppy Hugh wanting to bust firewood and me trying to save it from firewood pile and be like, no. It is funny. And I don't, especially you can sand it. Sometimes I will sand one all the way up when it is still wet and green, but it takes a lot of sandpaper. And sandpaper is probably one of the most expensive parts of doing this, no matter which kind of sandpaper you use. Especially in my world where you're doing a lot of weird inlays with stones and rocks and stuff like that, but that's what I was. Oddly enough, Shannon, there will be that video up tomorrow, probably. I just built it. So yes, I have a freezer that I turned into a kiln to help me speed up the drying process. And since this is my live, and I'm going to stop right here and vent for just a minute. So if any of you guys watch me on Facebook, or if you've seen any other, paid attention on some of the YouTube posts, I'm using a power sander. And I was literally told last week on Facebook by someone who probably hadn't turned on a lathe since high school in the 60s. Right? Boomer? Yep, gotcha. Oh, you're not talented. That you just can't do it right. That's why you have to use a power sander. Bro, listen. Technology is technology. If you don't use it, or you prefer to do things the stupid way or the hard way, that's on you. But unless you're like the old dude from the Woodwright shop with your feet and you're pedaling, right, to make your lathe spin, no, you're not using traditional methods either, okay? Just saying, right? These old men, these old boomers try to gatekeep and they get all pissy anytime somebody figures out a newer or better way to do stuff, and then attack all of the other guys trying to learn and say, that's the wrong way. You're just lazy. You can't do it. So let me show you. So got that pretty close just with 120 grit. So what these old traditional homies want to do, then tell me I'm wrong doing what I do, is literally take a piece of sandpaper. You know how long this takes to use a piece of sandpaper and get a... No. If you want to waste that much time and money, be my guest. But shut up and leave the rest of us alone. Because I can promise you, when someone looks at the piece I finished with this and other traditional methods as well, it's going to blow your piece that you only do traditionally out of the water. Because there are some things that you just cannot do as good without a newer, more modern tool. Alright, I'm good with that later. And especially with a live edge bowl, because you've got wings here. You've got places where there's air. Good luck trying to get a good sand on it. And again, right now I am just sanding this. I am just sanding this for videos purposes, because you can see how much sandpaper I would waste. Once this dries, this will go back. I will start with 40 grit and take it up to 800. So the sanding process on this bowl, probably a solid 2 to 3 hours at least, by the time it's totally finished. And one more tip, if you are a turner and you want to try a power sander, when I'm power sanding, I'm only sanding at about 200 RPM. Don't take it too fast. You will never go wrong going to get a bunch of power tools. Power tools are better than gold, in my opinion. And there we go. So I wanted to be able to show you guys the cool grain on this, which is one reason I went ahead and did a little sanding on it. And it is phenomenal. I'm gonna go ahead and do one more thing too before we turn it around so you can see it. Give me about 2 seconds, I'll be right back. So I'm going to go ahead and just rub a little bit of sanding sealer on the back side of this to pop the grain a little bit. And also, it's not a bad idea. I do this a lot with a little bit of sanding sealer. One, I like to see what I just made all the way. And two, it will help slow the drying process down a little bit, so you can help mitigate really bad cracks. Which for me, cracks don't matter because I use those as a feature in my bowls, the way I finished them. But I still don't want too many. And I don't like using oil at this point because I've got to sand this thing some more. And sanding through oil is a pain. This is just one little layer and no more than I'm putting on there. It's not going to gum my sandpaper or anything. And now you can see what we kind of just made here, at least on this side. Yes, that is not bad. Not bad for just a quick 120 grit sand. So now you can see, this is why everybody picked walnut, because it is absolutely gorgeous. All right, guys, well, I'm going to flip this. We're going to get started on the inside. Oh yeah, I'll go up and grab it here in just a few minutes if I can, because it's in the drying rack. Remind me again for the end of the video, I'll go upstairs and grab it. And worst case, I'll make a reel later tonight and post the reel of the one from last week so you can see it. Because everybody watching this, when I just said, yeah, I'll go get it in a few minutes, they know I won't because I'll forget, because it happens. This is one of those things that having a newer lathe would be nice, with some of the little bells and whistles, because most of this is an awesome lathe and I love it. I wouldn't be able to afford anything brand new and fancy like this one to turn stuff this big without this big crazy hand-built monstrosity. And this lathe is awesome. But there are certain things that are a little bit more frustrating. There we go. All right, and now you can see a little bit better what this grain is going to look like, how cool the patterns are in it. And like I said, it looks light and kind of green right now because it's wet, but as it dries, and I've been watching it dry, you're going to see this dark brown come out. So by tomorrow, maybe the next day, it's not going to be greenish gray. It's going to be dark black walnut. All right, now we're gonna see, I'm hoping it's still balanced pretty well. Oh, that's not bad. Okay, perfect. Sometimes when you flip one around with, if you don't have things set up with the chuck, you've got a bad wobble and you've got to go back and fix it. Now last week, this is where we got held up a little bit. I couldn't finish because I was using some really long screws. I didn't use the 4-inch ones on this one, but it wasn't nearly as big as the big piece last week. Any of you guys watching these videos, while I've been taking these screws out, I had an idea. Since somebody's asking, to see the bowl from last week, what I might do is just keep all the bowls from the lives, because I would kind of like to start doing these once a week, and make them a live bowl series. Now they won't be completely ready for a while, but might be something interesting to do the Appalachian Eclectic Live series and put those up for sale in their own spot. the ones I turn on live. Good idea. I will forget by in the morning. Now I'm gonna put my tailstock back in here and tighten it down just to get started, take a little bit more weight off, and then we'll be moving this back so we can finish getting everything set up, or get the center turned out. I also, for this live video, picked a much easier shape, outside shape, than that one I did last week with the sphere shape. One, I knew I could actually finish this one during a live video, and two, I wouldn't have to worry about almost breaking my fingers again like I did the last time on that video. Don't know how many people caught that when I caught my finger. I caught it, and it wasn't fun, let me tell you. I know there's some other people watching that caught it too, because they said they screamed when I did it. This is the same friend who went out and, for me the other day, bought me a 50-person first aid kit. People know me pretty well, I guess. Thank you. Alright, back to the sharpening. And I'm going to switch from my 5/8 inch, this bigger gouge. And for the inside, I'm going to go down to my smaller 1/2 inch gouge. A lot of the reason is I just like having a little bit more control on the inside, and because I don't have lots and lots of big screws and a faceplate, I'm holding all the weight of this wood on that one little piece of wood in this chuck. That's a lot more pressure on the bigger gouge. You can get a catch much easier, and it's going to rip it out. And I like to double check, and so I might take this little extra second and make sure that my my cutting edge on my gouge is still straight going down the different sizes. So we're just going to color it. And this is why this is a good example of why it's so important to use that black marker, because you can see it looks like, oh, that's perfect. If I hadn't colored with black Sharpie, I would have stopped right there. But I don't even know if I can get the camera to pick it up. Right on that edge, you can't see the light. There's still black right along this line, which means it's not sharp. It's almost sharp, but this is still pretty dull. So that's why I like to use that black Sharpie the first time or two to make sure I get a really good edge. And that's not just for lathe tools. I use that same technique for cutting and polishing stones. You can use it for sharpening anything, metal really. It's just a good guide coat. Even like we used to do that for sanding and painting cars, and put a guide coat on it, you sand it, and if you see your original color or you see the guide coat color, you know you've got a low spot and you need to keep going. All right, one more sip of coffee and we'll be good. And check. All right, thanks. I knew somebody here would remind me. And at some point, I'm going to dig my big 4-inch Forstner bit out because I can put it in here and set my depth and go a lot faster, but I'm not sure where it is. And I keep forgetting about it till I'm to this point. So now you can see what I'm doing right now. I like starting just kind of on the outside. That might be a little bit too thick right here. So we're just going to play with this. I'm going to keep going in for a few minutes. This part takes a little bit longer, maybe the outside. But you don't have to think as much about the shape because your outer shape determines your inner shape. The biggest key with turning, and this is kind of the thing that most turners know you can gauge the skill level of another turner on, is the thickness of the wall should be completely even, like all the way through. No matter what, it's always the same thickness. Like this bowl, this little bowl I did right here, this whole bowl should be the same thickness that this is. It is not. Right here it is a little bit thicker. This was done a lot of bowls ago and I still haven't finished it. So I even tried to put it up and fix it because I wasn't happy with it. Is it anything that someone buying one would notice? No, it wouldn't. Even half the time I don't notice it. But it's just one of those annoying things that make you not stop working on a piece when you probably should. Yeah, I always work the outer shape first, because the outer shape, because I use the screws in the faceplate, and so you can see all these screw holes. If I were to put the screw holes on the outside, if I were to try to turn the inside first, there wouldn't be any way to mount the chuck or put anything on there. So generally, I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody turning the inside first. I guess there's a way to do it, but that's kind of one of those things that just, it kind of has to be done that way just because of the nature of the beast. All right, now at this point, I know that this thing's pretty solid. I'm gonna give my chuck. I'm gonna just not twist it much. Just make sure I can't. Make sure I can't tighten it. Good to go. And now I can go ahead and drop my tailstock. Some people will keep the tailstock a lot longer on, and that's what I'm saying. If that makes you feel more comfortable, by all means, you know, it's not necessarily a right or a wrong way. Whatever you feel comfortable with, there are definitely pieces and times when you should never move it. And if you're smart, you'll never get to that point and think, maybe I should leave the tailstock on there, right? That's when you get adventurous and interesting things start happening. That's also when the most amazing bowls and pieces of art ever are made. Where are my divers or swimmers out there? Works every time. I think that's still a little bit too thick. I think she needs to be just a little bit thinner. Even spitting in it doesn't work. Yeah, that's better. Okay, I like that thickness. So now we're getting a lot closer, and this is where the most frustrating part, especially if we're learning, and it takes a while. I'm still not great at it. I've been turning a few years seriously. No, I probably turned more bowls than most people that's turned the same amount of time that I have, just because I was lucky enough to actually have a job that paid me to do it, and a great mentor. And being already retired at a young age gives me nothing but time to waste. So as I was saying, turning this shape on the inside to match the outside can get really frustrating. Where are the calipers? And this is going to be your best friend, and even I still use one of these every bowl. Right, Nate does not need this. He's been doing this 50 years, right? He just knows this is good. But what I'm going to do is, now I've got the gauge on the thickness on this, and I'm just going to spin this around, and it's going to let me know how off I am. So you can see right now, the very top edge looks like maybe about 1.5 inches, and then as I go down the bowl, it opens up. And so you can see the bottom of the bowl is still about 3.5 inches, maybe, something like that. So what I'm going to keep doing now is going in the side and down until I put this up and it doesn't move. As I go all the way around, this distance should always change, or should never change, no matter where I have these calipers sit on this bowl. And actually tonight, like doing the live, I've been sharpening my gouge probably less than half. Like normally I sharpen a lot more than this. Oh no, there is. There is most definitely times I've worked on wood and said, oh, hello, 100-year-old staple from a fence or a piece of barbed wire, or it happens. It actually happened about 2 weeks ago, right after I set this up. And then you got to go and fix your chisel, and yeah, it's not fun. And from the looks of things, I believe that this bark's actually doing extremely well. What I've always heard, and I've never tested it myself, but I've heard it from a lot of people, is that if you cut a tree in the winter, or any tree that's cut in the winter, the bark stays on better. So, I guess I could ask Papa when he cut this one. So let's see where we're sitting. Okay, so you can see I'm about, I don't know, 2 inches or so there. Still got a ways to go, but getting closer. And, you know, it takes 2 seconds to check your depth. So I do it regularly, especially if I'm turning a more traditional bowl or a very thin bowl. Because like everything else, I can always go thinner if I want to, right? Take my time, go thinner. But once I go too thin and blow through the side of this, you're done. But I'm not a huge fan of the ultra thin, really thin bowls. Kind of got my own little thing going here. And that's when the real beauty of the inside of a walnut bowl comes out, because we're starting to get past that sapwood on the inside. And I do have a tool rest, but it's on a different, just a pain to move. Just switch it out, that's curved. I need to build a tool rest for this one that comes in at an angle, comes and it goes in. I wouldn't have to move it as much. But given the choice of making new tools and turning, always end up turning and being like, tomorrow I'm going to make that tool I need. Tomorrow I'll end up turning. Tomorrow I'm going to make that tool I need. It's just a cycle that never quits. All right, so now I do my thing, and I used to try and go off what other people said. Because people would say like, oh, you can't do it with traditional tools, you know, you're not an expert, or you're lazy, or whatever the case may be. I don't agree with that. So could I, because I used to like fight to get the inside of a bowl like this with a regular bowl gouge, because that's what the real experts do. But I would end up messing something up and just not being happy with it. I can do it at this point, but I figured out my own way after I was like, why do I keep not doing something because somebody said that was the way to do it or not to do it. So what I'm talking about now is my carbide tip tools. These are relatively new. I don't know. I'd say 10, 15 years. I'm not sure how long they've been being used for by turners. It just makes a lot of sense. They're not as fast. They're much easier to control. She keeps them nice and sharp. And honestly, I'm not really sure what people's beef is with them. My granddad was one of the most amazing people I've ever met, and even invented his own style of playing the banjo because he didn't like how other people played banjo, right? And I can promise you one thing: if my grandpa ever, from his grave, saw me doing something because that's the way it's always been done, instead of doing something the more efficient and common sense way, even if it's new, he'd roll over in his grave or just, you know, come back and slap me in the head, because he was ahead of his time and everything, and understood that you're only going to keep getting the same results if you do stuff the same way over and over and over. If you ever want to do better, get different results, better results, sometimes you got to tweak what you do or change it completely. Well, yeah, it is, Lynn. It absolutely is. That's why you saw that fancy jig I have back there to sharpen one of those gouges like freehand. I don't think I could do it. I have seen people do it. There are people that can do it. But that takes a lot of skill. So I have my jig to make things easy, because I don't want to ruin a tool that costs $2. I saw that blink on that for a minute. All right, so now you can see the difference here. This is my carbide tip. That little round thing I was sharpening on that's a carbide tip. And that's actually really sharp on that edge there. That's the gouge I was using. Right, so you can see that's literally a gouge. Like, I could gouge your eyeball out if I wanted to. So it's very easy for that nice sharp corner to get a catch, especially when you're trying to come on the inside of a radius like this or an outside. Much easier to control, and you get a much cleaner, faster surface finish, for me anyway. If somebody else is better with a gouge than I am, hey, do whatever works for you. It's not wrong if it gives you the best results in the most efficient way possible. I'm going to put my gouge back on because I do need to thin out up here a little bit. And the scraper might take the bark off. So I'm going to try to just bump down about 1/4 of an inch to fix the inside shape. And that's one of those frustrating things about turning live edge is your knife only hits half the bowl. It's hitting here, boom, then it's gone. So right here it's only hitting 1/4 of the bowl. And when you get down here, the place, that's why you hear that thump, 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 thump. That's one of the things that makes it real challenging for getting the inside shape, especially on a live edge bowl, is because you're constantly, you're never in contact with the surface the whole time until you get deeper in. One of the things about carbide is you can't do it with a really big piece until you can spin it fast, because the carbide does not work real good at lower RPMs. There we go. Another note for anybody who might be a turner on here, or wants to turn, new turner, or just a question, I'm not looking here, right? Because all the dust shavings and everything, I'm not watching my knife. I'm feeling my knife, and I'm watching the back side of the bowl, because that lets all the sawdust and stuff kick out. So I'm actually looking back here to see how deep and the shape of my cut. Good grief. At some point, I'm going to pick me up one of those fancy $500 air forged things. Until then, 1 cent paper towel works, I guess. One more cleanup pass on the bottom to kind of get that even. And then we'll do the same thing, do a little sanding on the inside, and this will be done except for the drying part. Now this one I'm going to start all the way down at 40 grit, and then I'll check out comments, answer questions, and then we'll keep going. These wings right here are where you start getting a lot of crazy, or you get a lot of trouble because your tool hits for just a minute and then hits nothing. So if you move even just a tiny bit, you get these tool marks in here. They drive me crazy. Most people don't even know what, they don't see them. Kind of one of those being your own worst enemy kind of problems. And I could do the traditional way and spend the next 10 hours trying to get this perfect. The other thing about live edge bowls that most people don't realize, when they dry, they work. Right? And they never even look round. It's an optical illusion, they technically are round, but they do not look round because of the weird shapes. So that's one reason you can get away with power sanding a little bit. Because if it's not perfectly round, no one notices. And even my normal bowls, I still like them work. Like, I like to see what nature will do with it. Look. I already set a piece of 220 out. Let's do this real quick. And one last thing on this whole power sanding, new, young, old versus all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that this is the easiest way to do this. Probably, definitely is not. Don't just grab a sander and a lathe and be like, oh, this is so easy, I'm gonna sand this thing real quick. No. Doing it this way definitely takes a little bit more practice than doing it the traditional way to get it to come out looking like you want it to. All right, here we go. And then we'll take it off and let everybody see it. There's a little bit of sanding sealer here, just to make the grain pop and maybe slow the drying down, especially since the bark stayed on this one. Try and keep this one from cracking maybe too awful much. I don't think it'll need a lot of gemstone inlay. And I just happen to not have any CA glue at all. I was looking for some yesterday, couldn't find any. But it will be okay. But tomorrow, I will definitely be putting CA glue around all of this. Alright. So, here's what we've got, guys. Here's the inside. Yeah, that's a absolutely phenomenal piece of walnut. Like I said, where these are a little bit lighter here as this dries, that's going to get dark. So this is all going to kind of turn, the green will kind of fade, and this is all going to get really dark. This is going to stay nice and bright, which is just one of the coolest things about it. And here on the other side, probably get a little bit of shine even with the little bit of sanding by adding some friction. Yeah, there we go. All right, I think I'm happy with that. I love it when a plan comes together. Let's see, according to the live, hey, 2 hours and 12 minutes. That's not too bad. If I was in here by myself, I might have got it done a little bit faster, but probably not because I get sidetracked a lot. So honestly, I probably finish them a little bit faster doing the lathe than I do turning by myself. All right, here we go. I'm going to catch up on some Mom, stop stealing my life. Nice, that's good when they keep people interested. All right, there we go. All right. I didn't see any other crazy questions. So yeah, guys, so this is where we ended up. Fix this weird little phone mount thing I got here. Sorry, I'm trying to set it down. Yes, I will be getting the better tripod. 100%, so that you guys aren't vomiting. Whew. The joys of having long hair when... I think I need a stocking cap. I need to get me a thin stocking cap. So yeah, that is the black walnut that you guys voted on. And I'm not going to say I'm sorry that this is the one that got picked, because that is a super beautiful piece of wood. Absolutely. And people are like, that's amazing. How do you make that? You're so talented. I didn't do much, right? I spun it around really fast and cut some shit off of it. That's not me. That is all Mother Nature. All I do is expose what she has hidden inside. Whether it be with the gemstones, the inlay, the wood. She does the hard part. We do the rest. Yeah, actually I can't stop looking at it. That is very, very pretty the way the cross turned out. Looks almost like a heart a little bit on this side. And like I said, the you can see where even on here is starting to turn darker brown than it was, and so all this will turn that dark brown. So when I put this up to dry, and this one I might not put in the kiln, I'll probably try and keep this one drying a little bit slower, just because this bark did stay on and is in such good shape. I don't think it needs much. It doesn't need any help to be pretty. All right, guys. Well, this is what I got. Appreciate y'all watching. I've enjoyed doing the live turning, more than just a regular live. Show off a little bit of stuff. So if anybody else likes it and enjoys it, people keep watching, I'll probably just try and do it once a week. Maybe it's Friday. Good thing to do on Friday. Do live turning Friday. I don't know. I'll come up with some stupid name for it. All right. Well, like I was saying at the beginning, you guys did pick the very pretty piece of wood for me to turn. Also, the very Aaron is allergic to type of wood for me to turn. But I've still got probably 30 or 45 minutes before it really starts to bug me. It doesn't stop me. I would have turned this anyway. I turn a lot of walnut. It's just now I try to remember to get in the shower. Even if I was going to turn another piece, turn one ball, I'm in the shower, rinse it off, go again. So on that note, I'm going to go hop in the shower. Thank you guys for watching. Live bowl number 2 in the pocket. I know this is the only bad part, because it's still not done. This thing got to dry for, if I put it in the kiln, probably 6 weeks. If I air dry on the shelf, being an inch thick, 4 months before it would be a low enough moisture content to safely completely finish the sand without worrying about it cracking. So we'll show the rest of it in a few weeks. Later, guys.